Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat, and today I'm doing my August wrap-up part 2, and I actually have 9 things to talk about. So I have read some amazing books in the second half of August, and without further ado, let's just get into it because I have a lot to share. So first up, I want to talk about From the Neck Up by Aliya Whiteley, who is an Irish writer. So if you remember, I really gelled with her Skyward Inn, which is a full-length novel that I read earlier this year. It was very weird, and I recommend it if you like weird sci-fi stuff. However, this one is a short story collection coming out September 14th, and I would definitely keep my eye on it if I was you. No surprise, the stories that I loved the most dealt with eco-dystopian body horror, which, like, I love both of those things, and together I love it so much. So my favorite stories, which I gave like 4 stars, dealt with eco-dystopias, biodomes, elderly workers, eco-terrorists, flesh balls with like many eyes coming out of them, body horror, glass animal art, and toxic love. That was especially one of my favorites. Mutations, tumor eating, and like body horror scarecrows. So those were just like some of my absolute favorite elements from my favorite stories. It's really hard to give you like an overall guide to the short story collection because it's just so broad, and that would be one of my, I guess, like critiques about it, is that unlike other short story collections I've read so far this year, this one didn't really feel like a cohesive family of short stories. I'm not saying they need to be linked, but I think that they need to be similar in some way, either in length or in like realism or in tone or in just some vein similar, whereas so many of these are all over the place, like in the future, in the past, long, short, just fantastical, surreal, or like very realist. So I just wanted, I think, a bit of curating, because I feel like if some of the stories had been taken out, this would have been a much stronger collection as a whole. However, I really do recommend it because the stories that I really loved, I did really love. So if you want to know which ones I really loved, my Goodreads review, I go into like each short story, but I'm not going to do that here. But my Goodreads is linked down below. So definitely check that out if you like weird or dark short story collections. And then after that, I picked up and read, ooh, it's gonna fall, Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, who is a non-binary Nigerian author. And this was honestly amazing. I gave this 4.5 stars. This is one of my favorites of the year. I feel like an idiot for sleeping on this book for so long. I just thought that it wouldn't be able to grab me because it's a bit, for a younger audience, I'd say it's middle grade to YA, like young YA, and wow, it was amazing. So we're following Jam, who is a trans female main character who is also black, and she lives in this fictional town where all the monsters have been found and rehabilitated or put into prisons or places where they no longer like encounter the public. However, one day she accidentally summons like this phantasmagorical being, which she calls Pet, through one of her mother's paintings. And Pet is a monster hunter who hunts monsters like through the different realms, and Pet and Jam have to team up to find a monster that is still alive in their town. So other than the writing style, which I absolutely loved, which I was nervous about going in because Freshwater by Emezi I did not get on with at all and I DNF'd, but Pet is a completely different animal, pun intended, I guess, and I absolutely loved this. So some of the themes in here are monsters, angels, good, bad, keeping an eye out for unseen monsters that might not look like monsters, family love, strength of friendship, and retribution versus redemption. I thought this was so good. I think like one of my favorite classics of all time is Paradise Lost by Milton. I would be like, if you like Paradise Lost, this will probably be up your street. Of course, it's not going to be as long and epic, obviously, but this is excellent in its own unique way. I loved the family, I loved the friendship, and I loved Pet. Pet, the actual like being, is freaking cool. I wish that they had put Pet on like the backside. That would have been absolutely amazing. If it was like Jam here and Pet here, like chef's kiss. So if you haven't read this, don't be like me. Stop sleeping on it and read it right now. So yes, I love this and it's going on my best of the year. So definitely read it. All right, after that, I finished The Second Blind Son by Amy Harmon, which I've spoken about a few times. I was just nervous to get into it because it's quite long. It's like 450 pages. This is the second in a series set in a Norse mythological world where there's an island where there's 6 clans, and there was a curse that meant no more girl children could be born. And that's kind of the premise of the first book. And then the second book is following 2 different characters, so a blind son and a lost daughter who washes up on the shores of this big island. And actually I didn't realize that this is a companion, so it's the same events from the first book but told through 2 completely different characters, which bring like a lot more depth to the story. And I thought that it would annoy me, but it really didn't. I really thought that the 2 characters' perspectives added so much, because Hod is a boy who was born blind, and he is being trained up to be one of the keepers who protects like the daughters of the realm in the temple in the middle city. But he is trained from very young to be not only a keeper in the way of the ancient runes, but also to be a fighter who like uses all his other senses and a staff. Very badass. And then the girl that washes up on shore goes by Gisla, and she is the last of her Songer line, which like means she can sing songs which are imbued with like a little bit of magic, and they have this absolutely like such a tender, beautiful friendship where they kind of complete pieces that the other was missing, like loneliness and acceptance, etc. And I loved seeing their aspect brought to the first book. So definitely I recommend this duology if you're interested in it. I gave this a solid 4 stars, and I highly recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. Of course, this is the second in the duology, so yeah, you need to read the first one in order to read this one, but I highly recommend it. So after that, I wanted to pick up some short stuff because I had just read a pretty long book. So I picked up The Girl from the Other Side, volume 5, 6, and 7. And I was reading this for the Spooky Smart Bitch readathon because this covers translation, manga, and a BIPOC author. And honestly, I was really disappointed because volume 5 is very confusing. So I'm going to rewind a bit. If you don't know, this series is about insiders and outsiders. Insiders are humans that live in walled cities. Outsiders are monsters who were once human, but if they touch a human, they infect them and they become a monster and they're kicked out. And we start off and there's a little girl who's left in the woods outside, and she's taken in by a monster, and the only rule is don't touch me because I don't want you to be a monster. So that's the premise of the first book. And by the time we get to volume 5, things were just so confusing. So I actually gave volume 5 3 stars, and then I read 6 because I was like, maybe things will like ramp up or things will be explained. But actually I found like the pacing and the explanations to be plodding slower. We're getting there. So I gave it a 3.5. And then volume 7 is the exact same thing. Like we're slowly getting somewhere, and I feel committed to the series now. I think that in Japanese, the 11th volume just came out, and that's the end. So I've already read to 7, so I probably will continue on, but the last like 3 have just been like the soggy bottom syndrome, like when you're reading a book in the middle is kind of like slogging. Unfortunately, that's how volume 5, 6, 7 were. So I don't know. Do with that information what you will. So then after that, actually I have a parenting book, which obviously I'm not going to talk about for a long time. But I gave this 5 stars. This is my favorite parenting prep book I've read. This is now my like 7th parenting book I think I've read. If you don't know, hi, I'm 31 weeks pregnant. Thrilled, but also as a reader, yes, I've read a million parenting books. And this is by far my favorite because it is short, sweet, to the point, concise. Janet Lansbury studied under Magda Gerber, who was the founder of the RIE, like respectful parenting movement. So if you're into respectful parenting, then this would be an amazing book for you to check out. It's called No Bad Kids by Janet Lansbury. If you're not a parent, if you don't care about parenting, then yeah, this is probably not for you. But I just thought I would mention it because I did read it this month. And then after that, I read a NetGalley arc called The Necessity of Stars by E. Catherine Tobler. And what really caught my attention about this was the cover and the premise and the title. So actually just like everything caught my attention. So this came out July 20th. And it is basically an eco dystopian where the whole world has collapsed, except for like little patches. And we're following Brion, who is an older lady who used to be a moderator, like a go-between mediator at the UN. And we're kind of having flashbacks of her life and how great of a moderator she was in her time, but then also there might be aliens in her garden. And this is very short. It's only 80 pages. And I gave it 3 stars because I really liked the setting a lot and the alien aspects were really, really cool. However, I didn't really connect with the main character. One of my like least favorite things is when a character is kind of stagnant and all they do is reflect on their past and like their past achievements and glories. And that's like a lot of what the book was. So I didn't really connect with the characters that much. However, it does have pretty good rep because Brion and her best friend Delphine, who's also her neighbor, they used to be lovers as well. So they are both either bisexual or pansexual. They were married to men before, then were lovers. And that is pretty much all I'm going to give you about that because I feel like if I say anything about the alien element, then I would be giving the best part away. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. And we can chat about the cool alien stuff down below. Yeah. And then the last thing that I read, I just finished like very recently. And this is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. And this was excellent. Yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars. So this destroyed me. Oh my god. I didn't think that I was falling in love with the characters as much as I was until the end. And then like the author just like shattered me. So this is following a group of stay-at-home students where for various reasons the 6 of them don't go to school. So some of them are bullied, some of them fell behind in their studies, some of them just are like lazy, don't want to go, kind of have like ennui about it. Some of them are having issues like with their families that they have to stay home for. And suddenly the main character, who's Kokoro, her mirror in her room starts glowing. And when she goes through it, there's this castle called the Lonely Castle. And all 6 of the students can go there during the day, during school hours between 9 and 5. And basically they're given this task by the Wolf Queen, who is this like little girl with the wolf mask on her face, that they have to search for this key, and then if they get the key, they'll be granted a wish, and they have a year to find it. However, instead, what it turns into is like this really healing place where all of the students go, and kind of like at first it's so awkward and painful because they're all so like tired of everyone getting on them all the time about not going to school. But over time, like they thaw out and they become really excellent friends, and they're helping each other with their struggles. And let me tell you, like, when I say the end made me sob, I mean, like, I sobbed my way through the last 30 pages. I had to, like, leave the room because I was sobbing so hard, I could feel myself giving my husband, like, anxiety. Because, like, I never cry like that, ever. Also, maybe it was partly pregnancy hormones, but also I haven't really cried any other time reading any other book. So I think it's definitely the book. So if you're looking for a really excellent work in translation, especially since it was just Women in Translation Month, I highly recommend this. It is long. It is like 350 pages, but as someone who doesn't like long books, it felt like a short book. It was such easy reading. I read it in like 3 days. I highly recommend it. It was so freaking good, and the characters just like really got me. So you'll be hearing more about this when I do my Japanese Women in Translation That I Love video. Yeah, because I could go on and on. But that is everything that I read in the second half of August. Let me know what you think down below. But definitely, if I was going to recommend 2 out of all of them, these 2 right here. So good for completely different reasons. 4.5 stars each. They were amazing. Yeah, so I will see you in another video soon. Lots of love. Bye!